Welcome back, guys. The new tool is finished. This is going to be a brief video. There's going to be a separate video that's longer that's coming out a few days later for painters and people that want to customize further, but I'm keeping this video short, sweet, and as simple as possible because this is meant for the player. This is meant for the average person who's just here to play the mods, have some fun. You're still going to need this tool, but trust me, it's going to make things a lot easier. So the main thing you're going to do, you're going to come into this screen, and the first things you're going to have to do is navigate to your cheat folder. You could do that with any little browser window. So mine is right here, so we'll go to my cheats folder. And click up in the address bar to get the full address. Just out in the white space, if you click over here, it's going to take you to the folder and not do anything. So click over in the white space, Control C to copy, and go over to my program, and in this cheat file folder, just Control V to paste. You can also right click and paste, but Control V is quicker. Then you want to do the same thing for your textures folder and then the game itself. And then, do I have replacements? Yes, I do. Okay, so replacements, and I recommend making a folder here. I call this NT04 pack. Now the reason you want to make a folder is because they're going to get plastered here. All these files are going to get just placed here. They're not organized. There's a reason for that I'm not going to get into. You don't need to know. But just make a folder inside your replacements, navigate to it, and then you're going to copy from the address bar the same exact way. So click in the white space, Control C, click over to the program. I'm going to Control A to select all here just to get rid of this, and then Control V to paste the new one. The other things you're going to have to change here, if you want the 60 FPS patch, it is a checkbox right here, simple. If you want randomized paints, which I'll explain a little bit further later in, but if you want the paints to be random, you just click the checkbox for randomized paints. Your car number for your career mode, and there's a note here, it may make certain drivers of the same number not race. So I have my number in as 7T7. It actually doesn't work that way. It ends up you can enter letters in here, but it's not gonna work that way. So actually, backspace doesn't work in this field, but delete does. Okay, for some reason backspace doesn't work. But you type in your car number here. It may make cars of the same number not work in the game. It may make cars of different numbers not work in the game because I think it goes off the core data in the game. So if you run the 4 car, then whatever car gets mapped to Mike Skinner's original car is probably not going to be on track. So I recommend picking a number that isn't in the core original game, especially one that isn't on the fantasy cars as well, or including the fantasy cars, I should say. So whatever number you know isn't mapped to anything, maybe one of the ones available in the paint shop is a good pick. The double digits that are available in the paint shop, that shouldn't overwrite anybody. But I'm going to leave mine as 77. I know that number's not in the game. This is what's going to show up in your career mode. If you don't want that to be overwritten and you want the game to decide what shows up in career mode based on whatever car you're in, then you just go ahead and you delete that, leave it blank. This drop down right here is for your difficulty. This is, if you're running race now or season mode, you want to select race now in this drop down because year 1's going to be way easy. Even on Legend, it's going to be too easy. Now, the only one I actually tested, as you guys know, probably, I haven't gotten a chance to test the higher numbers. I just kind of took a guesstimate at them. But year 1's the only one that I actually tested in career mode. This should put you with a base 50 car, with a complete junk car. You should still be able to run around 35th. So later in the first year season, you're going to be running a lot better than that. But right out of the gate, that should put you around 35th-ish with the default setups and a bare bones car. The years beyond that, as you go through career mode, as you go through career mode and you change the years each time, this will affect the stats that come out. But I haven't tested the further years, so I don't know if it's balanced or not. If you find it too easy, select the later year. If you find it too hard, select an earlier year. If you find it too easy and you're at the highest one, well then I don't upgrade your car so much, I guess, because I don't have a solution. We never have a solution for that for the original game. I can only set these values so high for drivers. Now, once you have all that stuff set up, so this also, override birth and rookie years. If you're going to run one pack and it's going to have one set of drivers and you want them to actually retire and get older and, you know, get replaced by other drivers, then uncheck this. But I have it checked by default because essentially the way the pack's going to work is you're going to run the pack at, you know, for 2003, and at the end of 2003 you're going to load the pack for 2004. At the end of 2004 you're going to load a pack for 2005 if we have it done in time. So you don't want anyone to retire because the other packs will get messed up, because the driver swaps that you have happen will mess up who's in what car in the future, and you might be missing key drivers. So by making sure nobody retires, then we're sure everyone's available in the roster and we can map them to who we need to map them to, and they'll be correct every year as you go through. So basically, if you plan on running multiple seasons, leave that checked. If you plan on running multiple packs, leave that checked. The career year override, I'm probably not going to use this anymore. You can set this to a different year. The career always ends in 2023 no matter what, as I have a note here. And also, you should only use this one time. Make sure you only have that loaded the first time you load into career. Once you save in the game, you're good. Also, don't use save states. I haven't mentioned this much. Don't use save states beyond an individual race. Make sure you save your career, because you cannot load the other packs without resetting the game. And using a save state is not going to make that very kosher. So just make sure you save your career to the actual memory card file and reload it properly when changing packs or changing races or whatever. This here is similar to the reference file that we had, or the reference tab we had in the old Excel sheets. It's just the percent adjustment for the AI to keep them competitive at certain tracks. So some tracks they're better than others. Like road courses, they're terrible. Bristol, they're fast. So this bumps them down. This slows them down at Bristol. You can change these numbers to whatever you want, and these will get saved out. All of this stuff that I'm showing you right here will get saved out whenever you close the application. It'll save. So these are, there goes my controller. These are your stats and your different items that are saved to you specifically. Race 1 stat, race 2 stat, the percentage applied. There'll be more info here in a minute, but if we have a specific race stat applied, if we want real life race results to affect the in-game statistics, you can change the percentage here. So if you want there to be a specific race that applies 100%, then that's going to apply 100%. This should update. I'll fix that. There's text. That text should update. But once you set, by setting these stats, if I select Daytona 500 for race 1, then the driver stats will be 100% based off of the Daytona 500 race results and how they ran in that race, laps led, all that stuff, rather than being partly based on the season. But these are by default 35 and 15. So race 1, you select the exact race, and race 2, maybe you select the same track later in the year or a similar track if you want, but it doesn't matter. So that's the basics. The other thing you're going to have to do, don't worry about this new core pack. You're not going to use this. Unless you watch the advanced video, you're not going to need this. But you're going to have this drop down, and there's going to be a lot more options. I just have 2 right here because I haven't set these up yet. But you're going to have more options. I'm going to select 2003 main and hit load core pack. And that's going to give me more tabs up here, and that's going to give me more options down here. So you can see this is 2003 Cup season. There can be other options here selectable when we have paints and such done, when we get more packs added to this. And you won't have to re-download the base application. The packs can be separate and they can be installed, but I'm going to leave those install instructions to the packs and releasing them. Now, this is set to season because these stats right here are for the season. So The core pack is always for the whole season, not an individual race. The sub packs may be for a specific race. Now, if the person who created the pack set them all up, then you can use the sub packs for whatever race you're about to run. If they did not set that up, you could simply change these to be what race it's going to be. So I want Daytona the first race to be the main one, and then the July race to also affect the stats, but to a lesser degree. Then I'm running Daytona, so I want to select Daytona from this drop down, and it'll load whatever Daytona is over here. And if I change this for, maybe I want them to be easier at Daytona, it'll update that stat, as you can see. But I'm going to set that back to 100. I just want to add, I know this wasn't in all the video, but I re-added the race length output. So the race length you select in the game and how long, which will affect your tire wear and your fuel consumption, and how long, what percentage you want that to be equivalent of in the game. So if you run 25% races for the tire wear and fuel and you want them to be 20%, you just type 20 in here. This will save when you close the application out. Whatever you want the tire wear and fuel consumption to be, and then whatever you want to actually race length wise in the game. Those are the two numbers you're setting here. Now, this roster tab you can completely 100% ignore. The paints and data tab you could also completely 100% ignore. If you're just playing the game, if you're just here to load this up, load a pack and play it, you could ignore these two tabs. So just go ahead and hit finalize pack. And it's going to take a minute and load. Once it loads everything, the only other thing you could change here that I don't think is a big deal, but if you want, you could change how much their race ranks for Daytona. They're 45% based on their finishing position. In this case, because they didn't have stages and I don't have average running position data, it's actually 75% based on their finishing position, and then 15% based on where they started, 10% based on how many laps they led in the race, and those things will affect their racing stats. If you want to change these, you could change these. That's totally up to you. Just make sure you hit recalculate race stats after you've changed those values. I do have a note here for stages it's applying. Once you've set that up, the only other option you might be interested in is re-rack track stats. And what that's for is you'll see that drivers have track stats that are based on their finishing positions of that particular track type, so super speedways. So Matt Kenseth on the year, he averaged 17th. So that's not great. You can override this, but you'd have to type all these in, and we're not going to get into all those details with this video. That's going to be in the other video that goes into more details on that. But the simple setting that I do think is good to keep the drivers competitive is re-rack track stats. If you check this, then what it'll do is it'll take the lowest ranked super speedway driver and make them have the rating of like a number 1, and then the second highest rating, number 2. So even if 7th is the best average with Harvick and Waltrip here, which it very well might be, even if that's the best average, if I re-rack, they'll be number 1 tied. If I don't re-rack, they'll get the speed and the rating of a 7th place car. So the reason I recommend that is this will reset the field and make them, have that range of speed from top to bottom. Whereas if it ends up being averages like this without re-racking the stats, then they're going to be probably closer together in speed in general, which might be good for some tracks, but that's up to you. That's at your discretion. I also want to note on this screen, the only other thing you guys will want to mess with specifically is how many drivers you have full-time and part-time and who you have full-time and part-time. So in this pack in particular, the 2004 pack, Dave Blaney and Shane Meal both drive the same car. Now, with both of them as part-time, they have a chance they'll both show up in the same race in the same car. So if you want one or the other to not, you would set them to fantasy. If you want one of them, maybe I'm a Dave Blaney fan, actually, so maybe I want Blaney in every race, so I'll set him to full-time. So whoever you want to actually be in the field, make sure you set that if you want to control that. If you want it to be up to the the pack up to how it's set up initially, then you can let chance decide, because there's 36 that are guaranteed starters with me changing Blaney. It's 37, and then 25 that might swap in. There's a few set to fantasy here, that ones that didn't have stats in our import get automatically set to fantasy, but you can swap in whoever you want to swap in. It's totally up to you. And if you come to a road course, you can swap in all the road ringers, put them to full time, make sure they make it if you want to. So the only thing you need to do after all of that, you can hit generate paints and PNatch. You can do them separately, though you really shouldn't need to do them separately, other than if you're not randomizing paints and you're not using sub packs. If you're just using the primary paints only in a core pack, then you can just generate paints once and then be fine from there to just do the PNatch every time you change a race. But I'm going to go ahead and hit generate paints and PNatch, and it's going to have a slow loading bar here, and it's literally generating all the paint files, and they're all going right here into this folder. Let me drag that off to the side a bit. So it's not going to look like that because I have files in here. Let me just delete them and actually show you guys. So when I hit generate paints, because of that path I gave it earlier, it's going to start putting all the paint schemes in here. So you don't have to do any special mapping, and if I have the randomized paints feature on, it will randomize which paint scheme within that year, within that driver's year. It'll give you a random paint for that driver. Once you've done the generate paints and PNatch and that loading is done, which I'll have a better loading screen up so you'll know a little clearer when it's done and when it's not. But once that is complete, then you're done. That's it. At that point, you'll load up the game. So I'm going to shut it down here. You'll load up the game, go to settings, game properties, and the old thing of getting stuck on the loading screen, I found a workaround for that. So the two things we're going to do here, one, you want to make sure your textures are loaded. If you reset the game, you should be fine. Even if you save new textures, as long as the game reset, it'll be good. But one little trick I found that seems to work, I haven't noticed any adverse effects, but I can't 100,000% promise you there won't be, but I'm pretty sure there won't be. Let it load with the default settings, but while you're on this press start screen, then enable cheats. And then you can play the game. And everything should load in correctly. Let me put the speed up on. Then you can load in, and you're going to see all my drivers and stats, and everything is set up the way it needs to be set up here. And this roster screen, if you have everybody unlocked, it should literally only show them as full-time or part-time. These extra textures, I changed these out so that it just shows whether they're full-time or part-time. I left them vague as NASCAR because we're doing some Busch Series packs and other things too, probably eventually. So it's just straight up. Now, no matter what paint you pick for somebody, it's gonna, if they have multiple options, it's gonna be whatever paint it loaded. So the randomized paints happens outside of the program, or outside of the game, because some drivers in the game or some car slots in the game are limited to one paint scheme. So I can't switch paints on Kevin LePage. He's got one paint scheme. So by having randomized outside of the game, if LePage has multiple paint schemes, it'll still give you a random paint scheme each time, rather than locking him to one. And it's as simple as that. So if you have the game loaded up and you played it and you raced, and then you want to load a new PNatch file and you want to change the stats, what you do, you fire that program back up. You make sure you save in game, and I recommend shutting down. I do that without saving, because otherwise it makes a save state, which we don't want save states. We don't want to mess with that. So you just shut it down and then reselect it after you've created your PNatch file. And again, go to game properties. If it loads the cheat patches, you want them off for your loading screen to work 100% of the time. You can skip this little intro, and the loading screen will work. One thing I do recommend, if you keep PCSX2 open, when you enable cheats, I'd hit reload cheats. You shouldn't need to, but I just, just to be safe, better safe than sorry, you go ahead and hit reload. And that's it, and you're ready to play. So I hope this was short and sweet enough. I hope this was informative enough. If you want to customize further, if you want to do extra things, you're going to have to watch the other video, which goes in depth a lot more. But I wanted to keep this short and sweet because this is just for people who want to fire up and play. So I try to cover just the bare minimum of what you'll need to be able to go play this game and play with potentially custom paints and everything else, stats, all that stuff. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. I appreciate you so much. If you haven't joined the Discord, feel free to do so. I highly recommend it. If you have questions, if you have problems, get in the Discord. It is the quickest way to get a response. I will see it there before I see it anywhere else. And there's plenty of other people who can help there as well if I'm not available. So I highly recommend Discord as the place to go for any assistance. And if you have suggestions, if you have questions, if you have anything that you want to contribute, or if you just want to hang out with people who love this game and are part of the community, that's totally fine too. You just want to hang out, you're more than welcome. As we get more painters and we get more people involved, the packs should start coming out a little more often. I realize right now the only new pack I have is the 2007 Busch series. Other than that, they're what we have. The 2003 has more drivers than it did on the original release, but either way, come join the Discord, support the Patreon if you want more modding and more content, and we'll see you guys on the track.